Hello, everyone. Welcome to eMediaChat, where everything except Kirsten is digital. Here we are. This is eMediaChat. Hi, Kirsten. How are you today?
Good, good. How are you?
I am doing great. Shall we have an intro?
Yeah, let's have an intro.
Here we go. And we are back. Kirsten,
Ta-da!
we've got a great guest, an old friend of ours. I think you've met Shamir. I've met
I
Shamir
have.
on many
I have.
occasions.
I was at the other end of a table embarrassing myself at dinner at one point. Shamir was very kind.
Well, Shamir Ayyappan is our guest today. He's from Adobe. I met him probably about 5 years ago when he was with the Adobe eLearning group, and we've had a long relationship since. And I just found out literally about 2-3 months ago that he has moved on. He is now in kind of an exciting part of Adobe, and that is the eBooks initiative or division. And here he is, Shamir Ayyappan. How are you, Shamir?
Hey, Rick. Hey, Kirsten. I'm doing good. How are you guys?
I am good. And tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now, because like I said, I just found out. I didn't even know Adobe had an e-learning initiative. I should say an eBooks initiative, and that's kind of exciting. So what's going on with you?
Yeah, so I think I made this clean transition around September of last year. And so now I help manage the eBooks business at Adobe. And Adobe actually has been in eBooks for quite some time. And this is probably like the second phase where, we're sort of reinvesting in this effort. But starting with, the Adobe Reader and PDF, we've had a mobile reader for PDF. We started out with that. And there was this entire eBooks initiative, which was managed out of our Seattle office, if I'm not mistaken. And then we also started the DPS initiative, and eBooks sort of took a backseat during that period. And now we are reinvesting in the eBooks effort.
Now, do you see eBooks as being the next wave of the future? I know with Amazon, I believe it's something like 25% of books now are eBooks that they're selling, and that's quite a large number. And it's growing. What's Adobe seeing as far as eBooks and the future?
So I think some of these numbers are out there in the open, but eBooks actually had exponential growth for, during at least till 1 year ago. And last year it sort of flattened out. Though, the projections have been for continued exponential growth, for the next few years to come. So eBooks grew, and for Adobe and for all the other, players in the ecosystem, eBooks actually grew from small single-digit percentages of the entire business to, I think, today in trade books and fiction, trade fiction, eBooks would be close to print books, at least in the US, in terms of number of units. So that's where eBooks is currently.
And you mentioned that the Adobe had put some more focus on the DPS side, and now they're shifting with single edition being discontinued, and the focus is now back more solidly on eBooks, right?
Well, Adobe is not shifting focus. Adobe is definitely, invested heavily in DPS, and that is a core focus for Adobe. But for a period, we didn't have any new versions of our eBooks offerings coming out. So mainly the eBooks offerings consist of ACS, which is the Adobe Content Server, which is basically the DRM part of it, which is used to manage distribution rights for books. And the Reader Mobile SDK and ADE, Adobe Digital Editions, which is basically the rendering platform for the books. So we didn't have any new versions of these come out for some time. And there were new standards evolving for ebooks, such as EPUB 3, and the readers were not updated to support those. And that's changed in the last year and a half, and we are now significantly invested in this ebooks effort. We've had new releases come out both in the beginning of 2014, then in the middle of 2014, and now we have updates come out almost every other month as we build out our reader versions, as we build out the distribution system. So that's what Adobe is doing. Basically, we are investing in the ebooks effort a lot more now.
And so for those who are watching and not completely familiar, the InDesign product, which of course I'm a huge fan, if someone is an InDesign user but has not put their toe in the water for ebooks yet, what sort of things do you suggest they start looking at? What sort of products do you think they might want to start making, or places to look at? Because there's so much to know.
That's true. So, I think a good, a big boost to the eBooks initiative from Adobe actually came with this joint story, which we were able to say starting at Max last year, where InDesign now publishes EPUB fixed format, EPUB 3. InDesign basically had a large focus on the fixed format, EPUB 3 format output, and that was one of the big, headline features that came out with that version. And that actually has driven a lot of attention to the work that Adobe is doing. We had a joint demo where we showcased the output from InDesign, so people can now create, from one familiar tool, they can create documents for both to meet their print needs and their digital ebook needs right from the same source. And that's been helping. And our key focus for ACS and RMSDK on the ebook side is to ensure that our readers work seamlessly with the content that's been output from InDesign. So that's something that we're doing together.
So I noticed that when a lot of folks teach about EPUB, they mention to traditional publishing, traditional print students or people getting into the field of ebooks for the first time, that they need to think more like web designers. Would you say that's true?
No,
Okay.
I wouldn't say that's necessarily true. And I should provide the caveat over here. I wouldn't be too much of an expert in commenting on the e-production workflows, because
Okay.
I'm not that close to InDesign. I'm more on the ACS and RMSDK side. But from what I've observed, no, I don't think that's necessarily true.
Okay, so even though it's basically a website package, they can still think in terms of more traditional print
That's
because
very
of the
true.
new fixed format, yes?
Yes, that's especially with fixed format. They can actually think in those terms. I know with EPUB 3, that's this whole thing about it's basically a zip file of HTML content, but still, publishers can think in terms of fixed format books.
Now, you mentioned earlier that there is an Adobe ebook reader.
Mm-hmm.
That's different from the PDF reader, correct?
Very true. Yes. So the Adobe ebook reader is called Adobe Digital Editions, and it's one of the most popular readers available in the market today. So that's, if you're reading on, anything outside the Amazon or Apple ecosystem, then you're possibly, any books outside the Amazon or Apple ecosystem, then you're possibly reading this on an Adobe Reader or
Okay.
on a reader that's actually powered using Adobe technology.
Well, it's interesting
Um,
because if you look at I'm sorry, Amazon Kindle's reader, it's still probably the worst one out there. They've added such little functionality. They still can't do left justification. It's all full justification. The reading is so-so. It's not bad, but but people have complained for years and they haven't fixed some real major things. So you just kind of wonder about that. But now the Adobe Reader can read the EPUB 3. Does it also read PDFs, or is it strictly more for the EPUB environment?
Actually, that's one of the big advantages with the Adobe Reader, that you can read PDF, you can read EPUB 2 and EPUB 3. So yes, you can use it to read both PDF and EPUB.
Interesting.
So when people are starting to get to know EPUB, my experience has been that they're always a little startled that each device that you view it on in each version, because EPUB 2 and 3 being very different, you can have a very different reading experience. And how has that been for bringing in new customers? Is there a lot of knowledge that you have to, show people a lot of different possibilities, or do you think people pick it up pretty quickly?
So EPUB 3 is just starting off, and I think we possibly have one of the best cross-platform EPUB 3 readers out in the market today. In terms of content, the large publishers are, just starting to churn out EPUB 3 content. So sorry, you need to excuse me about that.
I think he just ate somebody.
That was a wonderful echo.
No, that's my dog. So I'm taking the call from here.
He sounds big.
There's somebody outside at the door. Sorry. So yes, I think, again, as I said, so the publishers are just starting off on EPUB 3, in churning out EPUB 3 books. Where you'll see EPUB 3 adoption pick up a lot more is in children's books, where you need to have richer content, richer design, so possibly there. And the other is in education. Again, the need, rich media textbooks. So that's again an area where you will see early EPUB 3 adoption.
So Shamir, what's the iBooks from Apple? I don't hear that much about it. What's the difference between, let's say, the Adobe ebook reader and Apple's iBooks, which I guess purports to do some of the same similar things, especially they're trying to get really heavily into the educational market. Any major differences, any advantages, one over the other?
So, in terms of rendering EPUB 3 content, both of them render EPUB 3 content.
Okay.
And they're sort of going neck to neck currently. I would say the ADE reader with our latest version, which is 4.0.3, we possibly will be, ahead of the iBook reader in terms of EPUB 3 compliance. And the way to measure this is to go to epubtest.org, which is an independent body set up by BISG, which actually, independently measures the EPUB 3 compliance of different readers out there. And based on those results, we would be slightly ahead of iBooks currently. But I think the major difference between what Adobe has to offer and what iBooks does is that in Adobe, you possibly would not be locked into this walled garden ecosystem. Whereas with iBooks, you would be working within those restrictions of, the sort of business models that you can offer, etc.
Now,
You mentioned,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
You mentioned ebook the 3 specification being a little bit more popular and starting to be more development from publishers on that. Can you tell our viewers something about the differences between the EPUB 2 and EPUB 3 spec?
Yeah. So mainly the big differences between EPUB 2 and EPUB 3 would be in terms of the support for interactivity. Support for scripting. That would be one of the big things. The other is much better support for accessibility. So that would be another huge factor. And what is very visible is the better support for rich media content. So, things like progressive download of videos, etc. So better support for that. So there's a large list of features and feature compliance that we work through, but some of the big ones would be the ones that I mentioned.
Well, for example, with Adobe, the PDF, you can embed anything with Flash. You can embed Captivate, for example, things like that. Would that also translate into the Adobe Reader?
So interactive PDFs, no. Okay. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think we support interactive PDFs on the Adobe Reader.
Okay, so the interactivity is limited more to the JavaScript kind of scripting or whatever scripting comes out of that. Because I think InDesign can generate interactive PDFs and interactive reader content, which is, I think they're the ones doing the EPUB 3 with interactivity for Amazon and others too. So I guess that would also work with the Adobe Reader.
True. So the EPUB 3 content which you output from InDesign would work seamlessly within the Adobe Reader. So any interactivity that is contained in that EPUB 3 file will be completely honored here. So, you're familiar with a lot of these things, right? Like if you want to have multiple choice quizzes, all of those can be supported.
Okay.
And, those are some of the reasons why it's popular or it will get popular in the education market.
Okay.
So other than the education market, where else do you see EPUB getting more of a foothold that it doesn't have right now?
Children's books. Okay. EPUB 3 specifically, right? That's what you're asking. So yes, children's books, again, mainly because of rich media content, the need for, some of the things that you typically see are, you need fixed format books. So you have children's books with images and words flowing around the images. You need, there are situations where this needs to scale uniformly that can be supported. There are situations where the text needs to flow, reflow, that can be supported. So those, those are two good use cases where you would actually see this. So one is education, the other one is children's books.
Now, does the ebook reader support sound or text-to-speech?
Yes. So the e-reader supports text-to-speach. So if you have, things like a JAWS reader, you'll be able to use that. Any reader that's available to convert text-to-speech.
Okay.
So you moved over. You were managing both the e-learning and the ebook side for a while. So did you have months and months without any sleep?
No, it was hectic, yes. But yes, it was an interesting phase where we were making this transition. But thankfully it didn't last, forever. But yes.
It just felt...
honestly, Kirsten, I don't think Shamir ever sleeps anyway.
Well, actually, what time is it right now for you?
It's like 11:10 in the evening.
Okay.
Yeah. So
and tomorrow.
Yeah. And you're still going to the airport tonight?
Yes. Tomorrow I'm going to be there in the US. Yes.
So when you moved over into the eBooks side fully, you said that your area is less part of the InDesign and more part of the knowledge rights management piece?
Correct. Two portions of that. One is the distribution management side. So basically the digital rights management, distribution of the books. So that part, managing the distribution of the books. And the other part is the rendering of the books. So, the reader. So those are the two key components of the solution.
Okay, fantastic. So anything exciting coming up that you can tell us about, or any new things coming, or is it just we should stay tuned because every week it's something, every month it's something
No, I
new?
mean, some of the things we can talk about. So, we did spend quite some, yeah, we did spend quite some time speaking about, the rendering side of stuff where, epub 3, it's, the key buzzword now, and we're supporting that for rendering epub 3 content. But we're also doing a lot of great stuff on the DRM, the digital rights management side of things, managing distribution rights, coming up with new business models in which books can be distributed. So those are things that we're doing. That's another big factor that influences the growth of ebooks. Being able to offer these flexible distribution models basically means that you can drive down, the costs of ebooks, or manage the costs of ebooks better. What you can do really well is create offerings with books that are suited for different market segments. So you could potentially create offerings such that it meets the needs, or such that it becomes affordable to people who couldn't afford the expensive textbooks in the past. For example, how they do it is, rather than making students buy the entire book, students can potentially buy just specific chapters of a book. So you can, sort of charge for just specific chapters of the book, and you can get that. So that's one distribution model. The other is managing the traditional library model that you're all familiar with, but now you take that and then you try and build models like what you've seen in the music industry, like what Spotify does, right? So, or what you've seen in the video industry, like what Netflix does. Mm-hmm. So, an all-you-can-eat model. So you can build all these new business models for books so that you do two things. One is you help reach new market segments that possibly the publishers and the retailers wouldn't have been able to reach before. And the other is that you help drive more revenues from the existing market segments by making by helping them discover a larger variety of books, like you would when you use Netflix or Spotify, etc.
So it sounds like the e-learning, not e-learning, I'm sorry, the ebooks industry in 5 years will probably not be recognizable as it is today.
Yeah, and the change is already happening. There are players out there who, are gaining in popularity. So eBooks also has the equivalent of, Spotify or, Netflix. And, in a year or two, you will have some of these models become really popular. And, that will be the way for people to consume books. Like, people hardly, or the number of people who buy complete music albums today is possibly, a small fraction of what it used to be, even 2 years ago. So that's, you will start seeing those trends even in books.
That's interesting, especially in areas of technical books and things like that. I remember going to Barnes & Noble just 4 years ago, and you had large sections for technical books. Now they've gone really small. If you have
Yeah.
one small little aisle, and I'm talking small, what happened?
Yeah.
Nobody's publishing technical books anymore, at least not in print, because they get out of use so quickly.
True. I mean, I think um, a lot, I mean, we definitely see a lot of education publishers showing significant interest in the ebook world. The education publishers actually have a slightly different format for this. It's called EduPub, EDUPUB.
Okay.
And I mean, it's a slightly different version from the epub 3 format. And this actually has, specifications for working with LMS systems. So I think that's where sort of the connect between my old e-learning world and the ebooks world starts
That's interesting.
happening.
Now-
But I think that's where it's headed.
That's interesting. Now with EPUB, you folks, Adobe owns Peachpit, correct? Peachpit Press?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I thought they did it one. Well, Macromedia
I thought they were
used to.
affiliated, but I
No,
don't think they're owned.
I thought they were owned by Macromedia, so I figured Adobe probably bought them or as part of it. Because I was curious if there were any initiatives, because they do a lot of technical books, a lot of all the Adobe products and the old Macromedia products. So I was wondering if there was any initiatives going on to start applying some of this to what they do. But sounds like no.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of, no.
So what do you think the competition or collaboration between Amazon and Adobe will be in the future?
So it's two different ecosystems. I mean, so clearly Amazon is a competitor in the ebook space for us. I mean, I guess the main difference between what Amazon has to offer and what Adobe offers is one is an open ecosystem. So the goal for Adobe would be to offer a viable alternative for retailers and publishers who want to, offer their ebooks. I mean, we are basically a technology enabler for retailers and publishers and distributors, whereas Amazon is more and more a complete ecosystem in itself.
Right. Okay.
I mean, they have publishing now, they have retailing, they have everything in between.
So what else is coming up in? Well, I guess I could say not just ebooks, but in the sort of digital textbook arena. There is more of a push to add video, yes, and more a push to add more rich media.
Definitely. So, yes. So there is a huge push to add video and rich media. I think what's happening is, and I mean, we've been reading a lot of this last year too, right? There is pressure on, I mean, a lot of people are asking questions on how the textbook prices keep increasing significantly year on year. Of course, there are input costs for the publishers and everything else involved in this. So the publishers are trying to establish a lot more value in the books and in the offerings that they provide. And that value that they establish is by, and I mean, basically when the books go digital, they'll be able to establish this value by being able to provide updates to their books more easily, by offering new models in which people can actually consume the exact quantity or the exact portion of the book that they want. But more importantly, very soon they'll be able to see how students are consuming the book and track that and report on the performance. There are already several startups in the US and across the globe that actually do this tracking. I mean, think of what LMSs do for e-learning today. They can tell you how long people have spent on a course. I mean, Adobe has the ability to tell you how much time they spent on each slide, etc. And finally, you come to the quizzes, and then figuring out how they performed in the quiz. But now the publishers will be able to do that, the same thing with the textbooks. You'll be able to figure out how much time people are spending, reading through a chapter. Where are they getting stuck? Can you provide help in portions where they're getting stuck? Are the students actually reading through a chapter and then coming to class when they've been asked to? Everything can be tracked.
Uh-oh. So my son can face a future in which the teacher might be able to know if he's actually cracked the textbook?
Yes.
Oh, I don't think he's going to like that.
We've done with e-learning, everything that was sort of taken for granted in the e-learning world can happen in eBooks.
Sure.
So not just a new format for reading, but also adding in metrics, a whole new way of getting feedback on who your viewership, who your readers are. That's interesting.
Yes. So, of course, when you're dealing with this in the education space, you need to deal with, you have the sensitivity about keeping all this at the aggregate level. But yes, we are seeing that done in education today for the tests and the quizzes and the classes being held out. I don't see any reason why it won't happen for textbooks.
Okay. Well, it's exciting. It's quite a lot of changes coming up.
Yeah, and we are at the end of our time. I know, Shamir, you've got to catch a plane pretty soon.
Yes.
We really thank you for coming on and keep us up to date on what's going on in eBooks. Come on back, because that is, I think, an exciting part of the future. And definitely we haven't even seen all of the potential yet of where it could go. So definitely keep us posted and come back on and talk a little bit about, maybe next time even show some samples of what Adobe's doing with eBooks. That might be fun.
Yeah, I'd love to. And thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on the show again. It's been lovely catching up.
Our pleasure. And how's your
Thanks for
daughter,
your
by the
time.
way?
Daughter's sleeping. She's doing fine. She's growing up too
How old is
fast.
she? Is she 5 now?
Oh, no, she's 7 now.
7? Oh, my
Yes.
God. She was
So you know how long before we met, right? Because
yeah, she was about 2, I thought. Yeah, it just doesn't seem like that long ago.
They grow very
Oh,
fast.
boy, don't they. So your daughter and Kirsten's son are the same age.
Almost.
This could almost be a relationship in the making.
Don't hook my 8-year-old up with anybody. No, no, Uncle Rick.
Oh, his
We're not
daughter's
going
very
there.
cute. His daughter's very cute. So
Yeah. And on that creepy note, thank you for watching our show. If you are in the chat pod, thanks for joining us. And otherwise, please hit the subscribe button or the follow button up above on the left. And again, thank you, Shamir, for coming on. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Kirsten. Thank you. Thanks, Rick.
thanks,
for
Shamir.
having
Safe
me.
travels, and we'll see you soon.
See ya. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.